everyone watching. Today I'm with Didier Arpin. He is the design director of the AAA game company Gearbox. It's the same company that you may know games such as Duke Nukem, Brothers of Arms, Battleborn, and last but not least, Borderlands, our favorite game, and this one in my background. So, good afternoon. Didier, how are you?
I'm pretty good. Yourself?
I'm good. So how has the quarantine been treating you so far?
It's been pretty good considering the situation. We were pretty fast to transition to work from home because we it's something we already offered at the studio since the beginning. So we did have people, like once in a while working from home for different kind of
Mm,
reasons. So that's something we wanted to offer to all the employees. But we never done it with that much people.
mm.
And to some extent, we even had like company-wide meeting with the studio in Texas,
Oh
where
wow.
we were like, I don't know, like maybe we must have been like 300, close to 400.
Is it like the first time you'd like communicate with like people from different studios across the country and
Yeah, and it might look weird, but we're using Teams, and Teams wasn't available like a year ago. Like it's
yeah.
it's kind of a new thing.
Well, it's kind of funny because like Zoom and Team like suddenly emerged out of nowhere in this
Yeah,
time.
just in time for the quarantine,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
good.
It's pretty funny. All right. Well, I accumulated questions from my like Concordia Game Development Club, and so there's a combination of some of my questions and some of the questions of my members they'll be asking you. And out of curiosity, well, these are like the main questions that they've come up with.
All right.
So all right, let's get started. So, for starters, could you give our viewers a little overview of your role as a design director? Like, what does a design director do at a game company?
Okay, I think it might be different from studios to studios. In my case, I'm one of the founding members of the studio in Quebec.
Mm,
So I do have a more studio role. So I might work on every project, but I do have like responsibility like staffing, some sort of HR, like human resources. So I'm supervising every like lead. Uh, right now I have like UI UX leads. I have
mm,
programmers, designers, level designers, the audio. Audio is a big part too of what I'm managing, and all the projects directors. So we have like well, again, the UX director, the game director, and Pierre André, who is the creative director and another founder of the studio. He's taking care of all the art.
okay.
And even if I do have like more of an artist background, I ended up in that position. So I don't think it's something, like I said, it's not a very precise role. It can, I mean, I need to step in whenever my two colleagues cannot. Sebastien, who is the director of operation, he's
Mm,
the other one who helping us and founded the studio. So the three of us, we manage pretty much everything that the company needs until we get bigger, get more people to help us. But that's yeah. So it's not like a normal day, like I don't work on something for like
okay.
2 or 4 weeks.
You touch you touch a little bit of everything,
Yeah,
I
it
would
always
say.
depends on the team, what the team needs, and so it's yeah, it's a bit special. And I have not I didn't have a straight line to get there. It's something that I think that could just happen at some point. You
Yeah.
become
But
get
like,
it.
did the other studios like did they already exist before the one in Quebec, or like how did
Yeah,
that
in Texas, I
transition?
mean,
Yeah.
they've been open for more than 20 years now.
Oh wow.
So Quebec, it's going to be our fifth year this year,
Okay.
in November, December. So we're a pretty recent studio. I mean, we're still pretty new.
Mhm.
Borderlands 3 was the first game that we did and came out with. So yeah,
Yeah. All right. That's
very
kind
new
of
compared to our friends in Texas.
yeah, yeah. Um All right. So how like I guess this kind of relates to the previous questions, but how did you like contribute to the like Borderlands 3 and like potentially other games? I don't know if there were other games that Quebec Studio have been working on, but
We do have different projects.
yes. Well, I you don't need to tell them because I know
Yeah,
they're
yeah, I won't
secret,
be able to tell
but
them. But well, yeah, a bit like I was saying earlier, is it depends on the projects. I think where I got involved the most, like more on a micro level, was more into the narrative side. And I think like I was like cinematic directors before, and
mm,
so I got involved in the narrative aspect of video games at some point in my career. That kind of led me maybe toward the the design director position. So yeah, how to answer that? Like, I don't know. Well, you want to do a follow up with that questions or?
well, oh, I was just asking like are there like particular
Yeah,
parts that you've been
yeah.
more involved,
I
or
guess
is
it's
it
the,
still
yeah.
like
I
an
guess it's when the
overview?
team needs something, I'm gonna step in. But the thing we're trying to do, and the reason we wanted to start a studio, was pretty much to give like people a lot of responsibilities and
Mm-hmm.
agencies what they're doing. So because I have a more studio role, I let the team work on the projects.
Okay.
And if ever there's trouble, they need help, I might step in.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm not as much involved with directly in a project
Okay.
because I have like studio responsibilities. Like I cannot, guarantee the team. All right, in the next 2 weeks, I'm gonna be able to do that and that. Like I might be called on something else, and I cannot like work on production
Mm.
directly like all the other teams. So and we have like leads and directors that are specific to projects.
Okay.
So they own the project, they're gonna create it, they're gonna find your solution, but I'm always there to advise them if they need any help. So it's more like yeah, it's more by cases, it depends.
Okay. All right. That's good. So I guess you kind of already answered this, but like, what pushed you to become a design director, or more broadly, like, what pushed you to become, well, to go into game development? Like, what was your,
Well, of course, I
like,
mean, I guess you have to love games.
yes, yeah,
But for me, it wasn't like it wasn't a straight path. I actually did like a CG class, like with Softimage,
okay,
and I did work for video game companies like in the mid '90s, like in '95. But that lasted like a couple of months, and then I kind of worked like 10 years in cartoons and comic books. So I've done like other stuff. It took many years before I went back in video games, and like I said, sometimes it's just timing, opportunity. It's people you meet,
yeah,
you and then at some point you're like, well, you know what? So like I've been back in games for more than say 14 years now,
wow,
and I work a bit in films too. Like, yeah, there was that moment where I moved in Vancouver to work at EA, but then I went back in cartoons, and then I came back in Montreal to work at EA again. So, I mean, like I said, it's not like I finished school and was like, I'm gonna become a design director. Like,
yeah. Well, like you always knew you had a passion for games, and you just
yeah.
kind of,
And after that, like you experiment, you get jobs, you do different roles, different jobs, and at some point you kind of see that, oh, maybe I'll be able to do that.
okay. Do you think you're gonna like stay at Gearbox for like a long time? Like,
Oh yeah.
okay, yeah, because like the other jobs that you've had in the past, like that led you up to here, like
Oh yeah, for
were
sure.
not as
And oh yeah, of course. I mean,
permanent.
everything I've done, even when I was working in cartoons, or it always helped you later on in your career. And after that, you live experience and some things that you like, some you don't like as much, and you end up, like I said, putting you in this situation. And of course, like since I had the chance to like found that studio in Quebec and convince Gearbox to invest in Quebec City. I mean, what's next. I mean, we just want to make more games, like.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
I'm
Borderlands
pretty much
3
in an
is
ideal situation right now. Like I
Bor-
cannot complain.
working on games like with such big titles as like Borderlands 3 is pretty like
Yeah,
impressive. You must be
it's
pretty
pretty
proud of
amazing,
yourself.
and yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. A lot of people I'm sure envy you. Actually, one of my members, I was asking them, oh, give me some questions to ask. One of them was like, do you hire? Can I work with you? It's pretty
Well,
funny.
yeah, we're always hiring, except
Yeah.
right now it's a bit harder
Yeah,
to
maybe not right
onboard
now,
people.
but
But I mean, yeah, always look up to our website, and
yeah.
you'll see job posting regularly for sure.
All right. So what is like a day-to-day life? What does a day-to-day life look like for someone that works at Gearbox? What is it?
Well, I guess
Well,
because
out of this context, a normal context.
I think like it can be very different for each person. Like I talk about working from home even like before the situation right now. People were doing it, and some people have families, so sometimes they come very early at work,
Mm-hmm.
and some are maybe gonna eat there for breakfast. Others gonna come later on. So it depends, like, and some people really need to be there when most of the team is there. And some people could maybe work 2 4 weeks on a project by themselves and they don't need to interact as much with people.
Mm.
So like we have a very flexible schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So it might change. And yeah, I mean, everybody has a very kind of different schedule.
Yeah. But like, does like the office building have like some cool things that like some other companies might have? Like, I don't know if you're allowed to say, but
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, it's there. Pretty much everything that we do at the studio comes from the team.
mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of Magic players. We have some people who love board games. So I mean, there's a couple of things like that people like at some point they ask us, oh, it would be fun to have like tabletop gaming or stuff like that. And we do have like a lounge where people can play games,
Ah,
and
that's cool.
sometimes they improvise like little soiree to play like I said, like organized tournament. Like I'm a big fighting game guy, so sometimes we do have little bit of fighting games. It's not the most popular thing, but it goes up to there. I mean, we even have like people like going around in the woods with airsoft guns. Like, I
There's a
mean,
woods nearby.
it goes from yeah, I mean, like it comes from the team. I think the most popular thing we had was like we have a beef jerky competition.
Oh wow.
So and we do that like every Friday. We do have like a draft beer for employees, and we have a club for Scotch enthusiasts. And the beef jerky competition, it's like once a year, and there's a trophy, and it's a big, very popular thing.
What is do you eat the beef jerkies or do you make
Or
them?
a bunch of employees decide. I mean, we buy the meat, so everybody has kind of the same piece of meat, the same quantity, and they have to cook it at home and bring it back to the office, and we make.
Ah, okay, that's cool. And then you all eat them.
Yeah, and you have to be fast because sometimes
That's funny.
the turkey don't last very long.
That's cool. All right, so I guess we could go in a little bit more technical questions, I guess now.
Okay.
So like how does like a AAA company or like Gearbox more specifically, how does like how do people like brainstorm ideas or like is there a procedure or system or method um, to know if certain ideas will work in a game, or do you simply rely on or do you rely on like experimenting new concepts? Is there like a kind of like
Yeah,
outline of
it can get very complicated. I will say there's not like a secret formula, that will
mm-hmm,
be
mm-hmm.
able to validate everything. We're lucky enough that we do have a good user test laboratory in Texas,
Okay, that's cool.
the team called True Team inside of like Gearbox. And of course, that's one of the best tools we have because what we're trying to do, it's always like we we need to come up with, I like to say, like a theory of fun. And when we have that theory, we have to kind of prove it in the laboratory. We have to test it.
Mm-hmm.
But the theory needs to be, people should have enjoyment because they're going to be doing this, and that. And then you're trying to prove it with a user test.
Okay.
So that's one way to validate if IDs are good. Otherwise, IDs can come from anywhere. Like anybody can kind of pitch it on the go. They can maybe make a presentation. Sometimes, like they might want to make a meeting and show art, or we don't have a specific set of rules.
Okay.
Like we have people responsible for the quality. That's gonna guide people with ideas and say, I'm not too sure that's in brand with Borderlands. Like maybe that's not funny enough for Borderlands. Maybe it's too violent, because Borderlands is violent, but it's not that much violent. I mean, it's always like it's a process, and it's not because something it's not funny enough that it's not going to end up in the game. We might have to change it, and then we try to talk as much as possible. Encourage people. If you think of something, don't be shy to just put it out there so people can talk about it, and maybe it's going to give some other ideas to some other people, other disciplines. So yeah, I mean, there's no magic formula to
Yeah. But I guess this kind of relates to the next question is like, so if it's like at the very beginning of the game making process of, well, at the very beginning of the construction of a game, like how would you know, like using the theory of fun from the testers, like how would you know if something is fun if the game is not really fully developed? Like do you have like very basic kind of gameplay and visuals?
Of course, like with an established brand like Borderlands,
Yes.
People like to shoot and loot.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
But for me, I think the best approach we always need to have is just to ask ourselves why someone will play this.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to answer that question. And same thing when you go to a user test, you need to kind of predict. I like to give the example of a horror game.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a horror game, it's because why people are going to play that game is because they think it's going to be scary. Okay, why would it be scary? Because I think that will be scary. And then you put in user test, and if people are not scared, well, you fail. But at least you can learn from it. So always establishing, like, for me, it's important to determine what needs to be done and what you're trying to achieve. So it's fun to have ideas, and it's like, oh, that would be cool if we can get a gun that is like, yeah, but why would people prefer that gun to that other one?
Yeah.
It's always I think that's the most basic question you need to ask for anything you want to make in the game.
And how long does that like process take to finally know when like the game is like scary enough or has like the desired effect? Like usually
for me, especially in a big AAA production frame, you need to find it not pretty quickly, but with a smaller team at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to create a new concept, you need to find why would that be fun, and you really need to put the finger on something that will be very precise. And once you control that, you can maybe sell the idea to a publisher, people to invest in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be easier after that to build upon that, because you're going to find your way. Because if you do it with a full team, it's going to be very expensive very quickly.
Yeah.
So it's easier to get as a small team as possible and make them work as long as they need to really find the fun and the why people will play that game. And then once we have that, we can kind of launch an operation.
Okay, so it's usually like as small amount of time as possible.
It's not small. I think it's more maybe small investment. You don't want to put 50 people in there.
Yeah.
But something that we might start working 2 years ago might come up later on because the market has changed. And now, hey, you remember that idea that we have? Now that we saw that game, maybe it's the time to, rethink how we approach that problem. And maybe it could be fun now that we have that technology. We have like better graphics
Mm.
or So I think I will always try to get have ideas in the back of my mind, like and talk to people when you have a chance about an idea, and at some point you'll see if there's a possibility. Of course, at AAA studios, like I said, it's very expensive to develop a new idea, so it's better to start soon, keep it in your back of your mind, and make it evolve. So at some point, you're ready to develop something that will be interesting for the fans and publishers.
Has it ever happened that an idea has been developed and like later on realized it didn't work and had to be completely scratched out from the game? And
Well, worse than that, I mean, in my career, I work on many projects that never saw the
uh,
light of, and it's gonna happen. I
yeah.
mean, it's gonna be really hard not to have a career where you're gonna work and sometimes like more than a year on some things that will never ship.
Mm,
It happens.
yeah. All right. Well, I guess we could move on to the next question. So I know you're not like too much in charge of like the art part of the. Well, I mean, you said you had the
But
creative
I'm
director
still an
and you,
artist at art, so
huh?
I'm still an artist at
Yeah, yeah,
heart.
yeah. I know, but you're not the creative director, and you're
I'm not
more
the
in.
art director or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. But I was still curious. Well, people were still curious about like what like the art pipeline, what kind of art pipeline is used for making games, like what needs to be done first and what needs to be done last. And if you can't answer that, maybe um, we could answer for like more generally, like what's the first thing that needs to be done in making a game, and what's the last thing.
Yeah, I mean, it can be very complicated, and art is very large. I mean, you have
Yeah,
animation, you have like props, you have character art,
yeah.
and but most of the things we start is always going to be through concept art. You you need to kind of it's faster for someone to just draw some ideas and sketch,
Mhm.
show it to the game director or the art director, and at some point we're like, okay, now this is good enough. We can send it to an artist. But you see, if you want to model a character, for example, sometimes animators gonna need that character way before you'll have the time to finish it. So, as an example, a character artist is gonna make maybe a base mesh, or we
Mhm.
say same thing with environments. Sometimes we work with the gray blocks, so it's
Yeah,
basically just
yeah.
gray blocks that will be dressed up around. So, like I said, every aspect has some, different pipeline, but to make it as broad as possible, like that's how we work sometimes with like not finished version so that we can advance some other aspect of the game. And at some point we're always trying to keep some time to do some polish, something you didn't have time to finish. Well, towards the end of the game we're like, okay, now it's that time that we can fix the hair on that character, we work a vehicle or whatever, but it depends.
For a game like Borderlands, I would assume like the actual like final product of visuals must look pretty similar to the concept art because of the style of the
Yeah, and
animated.
it's a bit more complicated to create a game with an art style like that,
Yeah.
because you kind of have to think of everything so it can work together. And when you have that many people with different style working on the game, it's going to be harder to have like a more control style.
Mhm.
When you do realistic, everybody can kind of take pictures, or they can kind of work by themselves.
Mhm.
But not, for us, there's a lot of things we actually need to draw before and to see if it works before somebody start modeling it. Yeah.
Like I'd assume like the actual 3D modeling must be very like intertwined with the the art, the concept art, and to
Oh
make
yeah.
sure that the like comic book style like remains accurate throughout the
And of
every
course, we
single
do
model.
have tools to help making that comic book style,
Yeah.
because otherwise, it would be impossible to to produce those kind of games.
Yeah. All right. So, next question is a bit subjective, because
So,
like everyone likes different things of different games. But according to you, what are some key elements to designing a good game?
oh, Well, I guess the fun, the experience is what. Well, it comes back to what I was saying earlier. It's why. Why would I play that game?
Mm-hmm.
And you might not like puzzle game, but if people like puzzle game, well, that's why they're gonna play it. And after that, I think what comes back a lot, it's always when you have a good mechanic that you can reuse and people don't get tired of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good sign of what works or not.
Like something that feels natural and doesn't like.
Yeah, and people want to come back because I'm sure you might have played games at some point, and sometimes it's the entire game, but you you arrive at a point in the game where it's almost feel like work. You
Mm,
need to still put an hour in before you get kind of reward, and then you're
yeah.
like, "Oh, not another mission like that." And it's like, so you want to avoid those.
Export emissions.
So
Is that what they're called? Like when you have to bring one character to from one location to the other. Yeah.
some people like that, some people don't. Same thing with first person shooters. Sometimes you have platforming, and people don't like platforming. Sometimes they
Mm,
just want to shoot. So it depends. And like I said, I mean, if you know why people will play it, that's going to help you a lot determine if it's good or not, if it needs to be there or not. So I will go back to that.
mm, okay. Um, so I get are you like involved at all in the you said you were like involved in like a narrative aspect of games?
Yes, some of the time, like I said, it's more to help the team
Yeah.
because I guess one of the reason I wanted to start a studio is because sometimes like places where I work, even if I had like the art director title or cinematic director, I didn't really feel I was directing anything. I
Mm-hmm.
had to kind of ask other people to. Well, I didn't even have to ask. I have to ask, but I was told to. Oh no, let's just do that instead. And I was like, well, I thought it was my call, and I
Mm,
didn't have really that opportunity. And at some point, it got a bit frustrating. So for us, it was important to start a studio where people, even if you're not the lead character artist, when you start modeling a character, you can actually kind of do it the way you want,
yeah, yeah.
and people can decide what tools they want to use. We
Okay.
don't have one CG software. Like it depends on the artist, and as long as it works in the pipeline, you can use it. Like as long as you make your deadlines, you can use it, and that's the kind of the place we wanted to build for people. So by doing that, I cannot go over their shoulder and start telling them what to do
Yeah.
unless I feel they're very in need. They're running circles and they don't know what to do anymore. I might get involved a bit more, but normally I rather see if they need help. If and so far, I think narrative is where I was able to help the most.
Mm-hmm. And
And
oh, go ahead.
yeah, no, go ahead.
No, no, finish.
Well, like I said, I mean, the other aspect, it's always sometimes I just give my opinion, but they don't need to reply to me with some feedback. Sometimes I see something, I'm going to say it, but I mean, I really want the team to own their everyday task and own what they're collaborating in the game. I mean, that's one of the main reasons we wanted to start a studio in Quebec. So,
Do you like contribute to their ideas like when
oh yeah,
you
for
play stuff?
sure.
Yeah.
But like I said, I don't want to spoil everybody's
Oh
work.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, but
but if I see something, if I think I can bring something to the discussion, I will do it. But again, I would like them to make the decision. I
okay.
rather trying to inspire them to see how I see things, that to force them to really follow that line. Is like, of course, we do have like those boundaries. Like I said, and we're working on Borderlands, which is an established brand. There's something that's going to break the brand if we go in that direction. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, besides that, like I said, I'm just going to get involved if needed.
Where do you find like inspiration when you like might
Oh,
like
that
draw like help the other people in your team?
I think it comes from anywhere. I mean, anything you do, I think, in your life is going to help you solve problems in the
Mm-hmm.
future.
Do you
So,
would you Would you say someone with a more like eventful life would contribute more, or like if someone maybe find would it be uh, let me rephrase this question. So, would you think like someone with a more eventful life would contribute more to inspiring people, or
Uh,
or someone like maybe that reads a lot or like watches a lot of things that could find like
yeah, for me
inspiration from
personally,
outside things?
I think I'm kind of scared of getting too specialized. And I think, at some point when you know so much something, you don't allow yourself to think outside the box. And at some point, you kind of need that. You need to get out of your everyday work to get inspiration. Otherwise, I mean, yeah. And one thing I've noticed too, I think I was lucky enough to work in different industry, like
Mm-hmm.
entertainment industry, and with different companies, different people from all around the globe. And I think that's what helped me the most in my career.
So, would you say to people that are watching that they should maybe play less and go outside?
Oh, for sure. No, that's for sure. I mean, it's real life, and real life can inspire you, can bring so much to the table. Like, what example? Like something I always told animators sometimes is because animators works a lot with references,
Mm-hmm.
but at some point they kind of realize that they have to make their own references, and then they have to film themselves,
Mm.
and then they have to start maybe acting.
Yeah. Okay.
So sometimes, like I always say, like if you can get like karate classes, boxing class, if you want to animate like combat and you never throw a kick in your
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
it's going to be hard. I mean, you're going to find references on the web, but I mean, once you do it, when you understand the weight transfer and then how you rotate your hips, and I mean, that changes everything.
All right.
So, and I think it applies to any job in life.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. I would assume game development especially because well or animation because you really want to kind of experience
Same thing with
the
art. I
world
mean,
that you're creating.
like I need artists that sculpt,
Yeah.
play, and it helps them. It's
Yeah.
always going to help them in the end. I mean, get you out of your comfort zone and live problems that you wouldn't have lived if you always stay in your comfort zone. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's same software at home, same projects. Like always working on Borderlands, never trying to do a different art style. I mean, the more I think curious you are, the more interested you are in other things, the more you'll get inspiration, the more you'll be able to sometimes come with new ideas, new solution that you would have thought of before.
All right. So that's good advice for everyone watching. So what would you say is the hardest part about game design?
Game design, I think I guess it's the hardest part, but it's the best part is communication. Because sometimes I think that for me, game design is a bit like a writer. I mean, you can write a book, and you might have people that's gonna like it. Some not don't gonna get it. You might be able to find a publisher. You might not be able to find a publisher. So when you pitch ideas, when you're supposed to design some mechanics in the game, you need to find a way to sell it to the other team members.
Yeah.
You need to be able to say, okay, so like let's just take my horror video game example. We want this to be scary, so when you're like, oh, here we're gonna do this, or I need that mechanic that's gonna build up stress for the player, and you need to find a way to inspire the team, like programmers, like artists, like that's gonna be the stressful moment of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't do that, it's gonna be really hard. But it's hard to talk to all those people,
Yeah.
inspire all those people, to kind of motivate them to, that's gonna be fun.
But
That's
it's
the
not yeah, it's not only about like convincing them, but it's also like trying to get them on board and like wanting to do the idea that you projected to them.
And like I
Right.
said, I mean, we do have people with like precise role that's going to decide if it's in the game or not. But if you're able to, like I said, inspire people, that's when you really score big.
Yeah.
And it's not easy because you become like a salesman. You come in a PR marketing guy, and you need to talk to people all the time. You need to get their feedback. You have to be open to what they say too, because for you it's going to be obvious this is the best idea ever. But if you don't put the time in it, I mean, if you cannot convince people that it is, I mean, for me, it's going to be on you. You know, like you're failing to communicate. Even if you were right, if you weren't able to inspire people, it's going to be hard after that, because you don't want to work with an entire team that don't believe in
Yeah.
what you're doing. You
Yeah,
know,
that
like
they don't want to do your ideas, and they're like
you don't want to force them.
unmotivated.
You
Yeah.
want to prove them that this is the best solution we have right now, and I think we should invest in that.
All right. Yeah. I do agree that might be the hardest part, especially if you have like an idea that you're like, it's gonna be good.
Yeah, because we all joined that industry because we're passionate people.
Yeah.
So we really like something about games, but when you go to work, I think you have to be a bit more rational. You have to bring it back so that everybody can be on board. I mean, your interior fanboy needs to tone down a bit.
Yeah.
And professional aspect of you, your more rational aspect of you, should come into play a bit more at work.
All right. And what would you say is the best part about being a game designer or working in game industry?
Well, like I said, it's communicating.
So no, the best, not the
Well, that's
hardest.
the thing. It's the
It's
worst,
the same
but
thing.
it's also the best. Because I think because like sometimes, like, especially in AAA games, you're gonna work like 2 or 3 years on a game, and some people work like 5 years on a game. So before you get feedback on what you're doing, it's gonna take a long time. But as a game designer or a level designer, you always work with your team, and when people like what you're doing, you have direct feedback. You don't have to wait until the game. I mean, when you see people get behind your ideas, and I think it's very gratifying.
Yeah, and it's like exciting. You're all
Yeah,
like on
because
board.
I think I'm on something good now. Like and you validate it with your colleagues. So I think that's the best part.
That's cool. Okay, so I guess next question is more up to you. So would you rather make a popular game or a game that has a more specific cult or niche following? And if you can't answer that question, is there like a game that you would love to make but unfortunately couldn't for a number of reasons? Like your fantasy game.
Yeah, I guess I can answer both. I think when you work in AAA games, it's not like, even if Gearbox is still like an independent developer, it's just they're doing like really big games. I mean, you do have expectation from the fans, and when you start doing AAA games, even if it's a well-established brand, even if it's a new IP, you still need to let people work on it. I mean, you cannot control everything you're gonna be making in a game. So for me, it doesn't make any difference if it's a well-established IP or it's a new IP or a sports game or a racing game. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, sometimes when you join that industry, you're gonna end up in jobs like at one studio once, I work on an army game, a skate game, experimental game, I would say, a dancing game, and like, if you want to stay at the same company for a while, I mean, that's going to happen. And I think if I would have arrived a couple months earlier, I would have worked on a hockey game, so. And I don't think it should stop you. I mean, you should embrace those opportunities, just try to go with it. And that, I think that's the fun part of doing, like AAA games. And if I wanted to make a game, like really for myself, by myself, or really selfishly, I guess it would be a fighting game. I don't think I'm good enough to be able to create something like that.
Well, it's just it's hypothetical. It's not like.
Like I really like the concept, so it was something that will really speak to me. But it will be more like something I will like to witness. I don't think I will be the key factor in creating a fighting game. But that would be.
Would it be like wrestling realistic fighting game, or would it be like Street Fighter or something like that?
More like
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. totally.
Yeah, I used to play a little bit of those games. I used to play Tekken 7. I think
Yeah.
that was pretty fun. All right. So next question is, well, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but do you have to make a game design document for your job? And for anyone that doesn't know what a game design document, it's basically a highly descriptive overview of everything that will contribute to the making of a game. So this goes from like the game setting, the characters, the audience you're making the game for, the dialogue, the mechanics, the concept art, controllers, and even the budget. So it's basically everything about a game. And so yeah, so do you have to make these, and how long and how annoying is it to make?
Well, I would say it's not annoying at all. And of course, like I said, I mean, we have teams that do that
Okay.
at Gearbox. So I'm not directly involved. I read a lot of them,
Okay.
but I think I think it's essential. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a bit like I was mentioning the concept art before. You know, it's faster to ask an artist to draw something before we send it into the production pipeline. So same thing with the GDD. I mean, you need to put your thought on paper. You need to reflect before you start wasting everybody's time. You know,
Yeah.
like I was mentioning, like being a bit more rational, it helps a lot to do that. You need to have an idea where we're going. You don't need to. I saw GDD where they were like way too big. Like
How big like do they get? Do you have like
it,
a
it doesn't matter.
visual?
It depends on what you're trying to achieve, but it can be as big as you need it to be if it's relevant. If you read it and you're like, okay, I understand it,
Mm-hmm.
it makes sense. So it can get really big. And I saw really big, well, 100 of pages, 180.
Oh.
But like I said, we have teams.
Yeah.
So sometimes there's 2 or 3 guys that started things, and then the tech guy is going to add something, and we can go a long way, like wise.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crucial.
Yeah.
You really need to think things through, especially if you're going to have like a couple of hundred people working on something, and it's all in your head. It's not going to work.
Have you ever had to do one, or like?
By myself, no.
No. Okay.
Well, I've done, maybe some personal projects, but never a real, thorough GDD that was like, okay, now we can start a project.
The reason
more like on the drawing table.
The reason why this is a question is because one of the classes we have at Concordia, we have to make a GDD, and it's the most annoying part about it.
I kind of saw that coming, and and like I said, like it's gonna come back to what I was saying earlier. Like we're all really passionate people.
Yeah.
And at some point, we want to join that industry because we have like the talent. We have the passion. We have, we have we just know what's a good game and what's not. But when you want to work in triple industry with 100 of people, I mean, that doesn't going to hold the root. You really need to put on paper what you're.
Yeah.
And again, it's come back to that communication of the game designer job that I was telling you about. You need to be able to communicate your ideas.
I guess it's a lot less bad if there's like a team like dedicated to that, and because for us like when we for the class we'd have to make the game, we had to make the art, the game, the code, and the GDD and everything at the same time, which was a lot of work.
But the people who do the GDD are the ones going to make the game afterwards.
Oh, like okay.
I mean, they have time kind of to commit. And it doesn't mean it's not going to change. I mean, but at least there's a start of a thought that you're going to explore. And the more you're going to, succeed and fail, you're going to adjust that GDD. And it's even a good thing to keep it up to date. Like I said, especially when you work in big companies, you're going to hire more people once production goes full speed. And those documents needs to be as well maintained as possible, so that new people on board, they read that, they're on par with the project.
Read a 180-page GDD and then.
If you're an artist, you're not going to read all those pages.
Okay.
There's some aspect of it that you won't even understand because it's not part of your job.
Yeah.
But sometimes, I mean, it can get pretty big if you do a big game.
Yeah. All right. So an easy question is, what games do you like, and what is your favorite game?
Oh, I think well, yeah, fighting games for sure. Like Street Fighter
Yeah.
is I'm playing a lot of Overwatch
Uh,
recently.
I was playing Overwatch right before this.
Yeah, I see it online sometimes. But I think like the best game from my lifetime, who I enjoyed the most, was Metal Gear Solid,
That's a
the
good one.
first one for Kojima. Like that was like for me that was like the best. Uh, like I think narrative was good, gameplay were good. I mean, there's so many good things about that game, and that's where for me that's the peak of like gaming. If I can get a game like that, I'm gonna be very satisfied.
But that's cool. I unfortunately never played Metal Gear Solid, but I watched my dad and my brother play it a lot. So I remember the graphics specifically, and the characters. Um, so okay, a lot of students may be a bit scared about like moving around a lot, um, uh, because like as we know, like Montreal has like is like this epicenter of like in Quebec at least of like game development companies, and there's a lot of like companies to choose from. So for this reason, I'm like wondering. I would like to know a little bit more what it's like to work in Quebec City as opposed to Montreal, because I mean I'm asking for students from
Yeah, for
Montreal.
sure.
Yeah.
And I wanna sell Quebec City as much as I can. Of course, I love it here, and I think one of the big differences is like we do have like we do start to have a bunch of studios in Quebec. I mean, I guess the three biggest one is Gearbox, Beanox, Activision, and Ubisoft.
Okay.
And but there are so many independent studios,
Yeah.
like and we're all on the same like kind of 3 or 4 blocks.
Okay, that's
We're
cool.
all like downtown, and everybody kind of see each other all the time. So it's pretty interesting for and I think the relation between studio is super good in Quebec. I
That's cool.
mean, because people sometimes switch because they want to work on a different projects, and it happens. Like I remember, like people who wanted to work on more cartoony project, they change because they prefer that style and they were artists. So, I mean, it happens, and people keep in touch, and I think that's a really fun part about Quebec. They said there's traffic, but there's no traffic in Quebec. I mean, compared to Montreal,
Yeah.
there's nothing. And I think it's very interesting too if you want to live close to the nature.
Mhm.
We're like 20 minutes from mountains here, and
That's
it's
nice.
yeah. I mean, it's more like a big village, like or a very very small Montreal. And old Quebec is just really amazing. I mean, the number of good restaurants we have in Quebec, it's pretty amazing too.
Yeah.
So I mean, and I understand like, and for me it's weird because when I started my career more in cartoons and films, and you have to kind of move a lot because sometimes you only have contracts, and
Mhm.
when the contract ends, you need to find another job.
Mm.
And at some point, I had to move in Vancouver because but games the yeah, you have that opportunity to kind of get a job for the next like 10-15 years if you want. I mean, and that's like that's very interesting, and I think Quebec is fun for that. If you want to build a family, like buy a house, it's going to be way cheaper than Montreal. It's so. And like I said, I think we have good studios in Quebec, and the scene is pretty fun.
It's actually pretty interesting because like I hear a lot about like online and things like oh like game development like you're only gonna work in like on one game for like 3 years and it's done and they'll like I hear these horror stories about like
Yeah.
companies like firing like developers after a couple years, but it's nice to hear that like in Quebec, well, also in Montreal, I guess that like
Oh yeah, for sure.
companies.
And I think like for me, I think it's the older you get, the more responsibilities you get in a studio. Sometimes the more you might enter in conflicts with some
Mm-hmm.
people, and like, oh, why don't we do this instead? And that and that's I guess that's why at some point I just want to start your own studio. But uh, for most people starting in the industry, I think they're gonna have a blast. I
Yeah.
mean, it's and yes, I mean, like I said, we have to remember it is an entertainment industry, and it's not like I think the best job security you can have it's in your talent, your portfolio.
Okay. Yeah.
Like don't put your hope too high on a company. It's fun to stay for the same company a number of years, and I think people in Quebec are more used to that.
Yeah.
They don't move around as much as maybe in Montreal because we don't have that many studios opening all the time too. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
in Montreal they come and go, so I mean it creates a movement. But yeah, I mean yeah, no, I think it's worth it to to come in Quebec and not be afraid.
Yeah.
And especially early in your career, I think it's worth it to work with different people, travel, like meet people. Like it's the only other thing I can say about Quebec, if you don't speak French,
Yeah.
might have some difficulties sometimes,
Okay. Yeah, that is a fair point.
Spanish or something like that. Too. But it's a way better place to practice your French than Montreal.
Yeah.
Because in Montreal, everybody switch in English.
Yeah, that's true. Like the moment you they could sense a little bit of an accent, they'll like switch to the English. Um, all right. So if you could work on anything else other than like a design director, but it's still like related to games, what would it be? Like I know like I guess you kind of work in everything, but
no, I think a writer. I think
writer.
that writing will be the thing I will prefer the most.
Okay. That's because you used to do like comics and things.
Yeah, and it's something I want to go back to, at some point, and maybe in my spare time. And I guess compared to other projects I had in my career, maybe it's the most realistic one. Writing doesn't take as much time as drawing, and like so. Writing is always something in the back of my mind. I can always come up with new ideas and start like writing some notes down. So
Yeah, that's nice. All right. Have you ever like participated in a game jam? Like
no,
no, you
not,
haven't.
not even as a spectator or
Oh
anything like that.
wow.
That's sad, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, like it might something we start doing. I mean, we didn't advertise a lot our studio since the opening, like almost 5 years ago, and now that we ship Borderlands, we're more in touch with university, and we will try to get closer to those kind of events for sure. And yeah, I would like to be a part of something like that.
It's very it's a lot of work.
Yeah, well,
It's intense. Maybe like since you already have the job, maybe you don't need to.
yeah, but I mean, like like I was saying, just maybe assisting to it, like
Yeah.
being part of it, like witness it more, because like I said, I've never been there when it was happening, so I only heard stories about it, and I know people who've done some, but yeah, it's kind of far from me.
Okay. So I guess on a closing note, this will be like our last question.
Right?
Do you have any, actually, before last question, do you have any advice for students that want to become game designers or game developers or animators or anything related to the game industry?
Yeah, I guess I mentioned it like a bit before. Like do something else than games.
Yeah.
Like you have. I think like almost like 90% of our job is solving problems.
Okay.
Because the ideas they take time to develop, and that's pretty quick. But then once you start working, you're always going to encounter a bunch of problems. And I think the best skill you can have as a developer has been adaptive. You have to, what I like to say, roll with the punches, because that's what game development is. You can never predict. Like we've done the two first DLCs for Borderlands.
Yeah.
And even if it's the same game, it's a DLC. We have two different teams that didn't do the DLC the same way.
Oh.
I mean, we always have different challenge, and sometimes it's timing. It's it's talent. It's so to think there's like a perfect solution, like there's a like I was even asked at some point, like, what are like the 5 or 10 or even like 20 things I need to do to become a lead artist?
Oh wow.
There's not, it's not that precise. I mean, it's really something you need to develop, and everybody had their style.
Yeah.
And so I think empathy is very important in development. You need to understand that, like maybe for you it's not important as a designer, but it might be important as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to respect each other when we develop games. I mean, it cannot be only about you. Like it's it's a team effort.
Have like a little bit of like room for other people's input
Yeah,
and
be
like
open-minded, because
yeah.
I mean, the chances that even if you have an ideas that make it in the game, the chances that they're going to stay the same are very slim.
Yeah.
Because we're going to do user tests, we're going to find solution. I mean, it's going to evolve a lot. So I mean, you have to be able to adapt and welcome that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's just going to make the game better in the end. So it's not
And
easy.
and
When we're passionate people, it's not always easy to kind of let go and let people take over
yeah.
your idea.
Yeah.
It's
And
not
also get out of your comfort zones. Yeah.
always.
Alright. On a last, so now it's the last question. Is there anything you'd like to tell our viewers before we conclude?
Oh, well, keep up the good work.
All right. Thank you.
No, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk. I hope it will be useful. And if people want to do follow up, you can add me on LinkedIn or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind. I'll try to respond as soon as I got time.
Thank you for taking the time to like talk to me and our viewers, and like I really enjoyed the conversation. I also hope like everyone learned a lot from it, and it was a nice little kind of interview that people will enjoy. And I hope you all have a nice weekend and a nice summer, because we're at the end of the semester. So stay safe, everyone, and of course, Didier.
Well, thank
And
you. It was a pleasure.
yeah, and thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.